Kerri. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. For those of you who haven't met Kerri, Kerri is the Partnerships Manager at Klaviyo. And Kerri, you're actually our first guest on our new Pep Talk video series. So I'm super excited about that. And for those of you who don't know, or everyone's new to this, in fact, so it's going to be our Q&A style Pep Talks, which are going to be released on a monthly basis. And we're going to dive into different topics from SMS marketing that we're chatting about today, and also things like sign-up conversion, segmentation, all those kind of juicy topics that lots of you want to know more about. So I intentionally want to keep these quite short and punchy and to the point. So Kerri, should we dive straight in?
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Great. Okay, so today we're all talking about SMS marketing. And I guess our first question, which I'm really keen to ask, is the fact that SMS is becoming much more of a popular tool from a D2C business perspective. Do you have any insight into kind of why you think that is?
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. This has been a trend that's been, increasing even more rapidly over the last couple of years. And I think a key reason for that is the change in our behavior as consumers. So if you think over the course of the pandemic, we've all been glued to our phones pretty much, way more than we normally would, with, chatting to friends, family, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, shopping via mobile is at its highest rates ever. So it's essentially brands meeting consumers where they are most present, where they are most. I mean, I don't know, you and I, for instance, we've both probably got our phones within arm's reach, any of the listeners as well. So it does kind of make sense for marketers to move into that channel. Another key reason I guess we're seeing this trend is the saturation of the other ways of people are reaching customers. So I think it's 9% of digital ads are viewed for more than a second. So it's getting increasingly difficult to reach people via those traditional channels. So it's a way of branching out and reaching your customers in a slightly different way.
Yeah, interesting. And are there any stats that you're seeing that really highlight the effectiveness of SMS marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's one that speaks to the immediacy of SMS that I really like, which is that 90% of people open a text within the first 3 minutes. So for time sensitive messages that are really important to a brand, so an abandoned cart, for instance, or maybe you're letting your VIPs know about early access to a new product launch or a sale. These are incredibly effective channels to be contacting customers for those kinds of messages. Another stat I really like is that SMS tends to have an 8 times higher click-through rate than email. By no means we're saying all the messages that you're sending via email should now be sent via SMS. You've got to tailor the type of messaging to each channel, also tailoring what customer segment you're sending those messages to as well. But the fact that click-through rate is so much higher just proves that it is super effective. So kind of on that note about using both together, we tend to say at Klaviyo to use a blend, a combination of the two, and that's how you can create like a really winning strategy. So one flow that we know works really well using SMS with email is the welcome series. So typically customers who use the welcome series with both email and SMS side by side, they'll see click-through rates of over 40% and placed orders of 15% as well. So super effective there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. The fact that combining the two has that real boost in conversion rate. Cool. Okay. And if you were starting from scratch today on your SMS journey, what are the sort of 3 or 4 things you'd do to start driving customer engagement via SMS?
Great question. I think the first thing you've got to think about is capturing the phone numbers in the first place. So you've got to have a strategy in place to how are you going to capture that information. So a good way to do that is with an incentive. So have sign-up forms that provide some kind of incentive. So whether it's access to VIP content, access to a particular discount or anything. So having that kind of incentive-driven sign-up form is great. Along a similar vein, make it really clear, in checkout as well. That's a great way to collect consent, is in checkout. I would say, make it really explicit why you're gathering that information, just so that, there's an understanding there and you won't see unsubscribe rates. But 2 really key ways to collect consent. And then when it comes to the implementation side of things, where you should get started, That welcome series is really, really powerful. Luckily within Klaviyo, we've got a lot of things templated already. So it's a great place to, get started. And then also the abandoned cart messages as well. So that those kind of abandoned cart, time sensitive things, they're really, really impactful. And I think, I don't know, if you're a brand that's maybe a little hesitant to roll that out, why don't you send it as a, if they haven't responded to the abandoned cart email, then send them the SMS message, because you've got to think their inboxes are probably full at this point with all of these other brands. Maybe they've missed it. Maybe they've missed that message. So rather than trying again on the same channel, trying a different one, and you might find, you've got a whole base of customers that you've just not tapped into yet because it's not been via their most appropriate channel.
Yeah, great. That's super interesting. And just talking on the kind of consent perspective, obviously navigating the world of SMS might seem a bit tricky for people starting out, particularly around gathering consent. Do you have any sort of tips and advice on how brands should go about gathering consent, and the kind of age-old question of whether you need consent for transactional messages?
Yeah, very good questions again. So I guess the first thing I would talk to is the gathering consent for transactional messages. So this does depend on what region you're in. So I would always, check first what region it is that you're selling in. So in the US, for instance, you do need consent for transactional messages. In the UK, on the other hand, so long as there is a legitimate reason for those transactional messages to be happening, it's fine. When it comes to gathering consent, more broadly, I would say be really explicit with the words that you're using, making sure that you're working to GDPR best practice. We've got lots of docs and support available within Klaviyo to help with that. Similarly, making sure that your privacy policy is updated, your terms of service is updated. Again, we've got lots of content to help people if they're not sure where to start with that as well. And also having a double opt-in as well. So making sure that people, definitely wanting to be subscribed to those messages.
Yeah, cool. No, it's great. I think, as you say, like a lot of people are, a lot of our clients are definitely asking us more around the kind of the SMS side and how they start doing it and how they collect that consent, and also how they sort of integrate with their existing email channel. So I think great from a Klaviyo perspective that you've got email and SMS all in one place, so you don't have to have multiple systems trying to talk to each other, which is always a big help. Well, super, thank you so much. We're intentionally want to keep these nice and short and punchy, but I hope that's given everyone a really good insight into kind of how to get started and a few key things to think about. So thank you very much, Kerri.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, Georgie.